start, they should be turning it on.
Hello, hello, hello. Thank you. I'm so happy to see all these people here. It's wonderful. I'm Nona Kaspers. I'm the current chair of the Creative Writing Department. I am doing light framing at the beginning of this event because really it is the 14 Hills editors and graduate students, along with Carolina De Robertis, who did the work to make this event happen. One more sentence. So the Creative Writing Department has been very lucky this year, and we are very grateful to have received a George and Judy Marcus Foundation for Excellence in Creative Writing Endowment, which means money, which made it possible for us to support the department, to support 14 Hills, which is the national literary review that's sponsored by the department and by the university. In this, their 10th Gina Berriault Award celebration. And tonight we're very lucky to have with us and to honor with the Gina Berriault Award the author of the Thank Goodness It Hit the World, that's what I call it, the Thank Goodness It Hit the World novel, They're There, Tommy Orange. Dan. He does not like to be forced to dance, just so you know. Nobody try it. Danny Buono and Nick Green, who is the current editor-in-chief of 14 Hills, please take the stage and introduce Tommy Orange.
Before we begin, please take a second and silence your cell phones. Nice, thanks. Welcome. I'm Nick Green, creative writing MFA candidate here at SF State, and the current editor-in-chief of 14 Hills, San Francisco State's graduate-run literary journal.
My name is Danny Bueno. I'm also a creative writing MFA student here. I did my undergrad at San Francisco State University in creative writing as well. I've studied with some amazing professors who continue to help me grow. And to me, this school represents, in its history and the people that are a part of it, true community. I'm honored to be here with you tonight.
Tonight we're here to honor the winner of the 2019 Gina Berriault Award. But first I want to say thank you to the many people who have helped to make tonight possible. Professor Kaspers, the Creative Writing Department Chair you just met, along with Jane George and Catherine Quid from the department office for the 100 things they did to manifest tonight, and the 100 things I know they did, and the 100 things that I don't know they did. Dan Schifrin for his notes on Gina Berriault Award ceremonies past, many 14 Hills editors and staff. I don't have time to thank individually. I appreciate all your efforts. And finally, I'd like to thank Professor De Robertis. Without her energy, encouragement, and enthusiasm, tonight could not have happened. As Professor Castor already mentioned, we at 14 Hills, along with the Creative Writing Department and Marcus Fund, are overjoyed to celebrate this year's winner of the Gina Berriault Award, Tommy Orange. The award was inaugurated in 2009 to pay homage to Gina Berriault, a former San Francisco State professor who displayed a selflessness and unflinching compassion in her writing and as a teacher. Since then, each year, we find a writer who brings a similar spirit to their work. Born Arline Shandling in Long Beach, California in 1926 to Russian Jewish immigrant parents, Gina Berriault started writing early, inspired in part by her father, and over the years turned out 4 novels, 3 short story collections, which collectively earned her a National Books Critics Circle Award, a Penn Faulkner Award, 2 O. Henry Awards, and the Paris Review's Aga Khan Fiction Prize. Through her career, Berriault was known as a writer's writer. Tobin Harshaw, reviewing Women in Their Beds, and for the New York Times, wrote, "One struggles to find a sentence that is anything less than jewel box perfect." But Berriault was a hidden jewel, not known as well as she should have been, which is partly why former SF State professor Peter Orner, along with 14 Hills Press, created an award to honor both Berriault and a living writer whose work met the same enlightened standards as hers. Past winners include Adam Johnson, Yi-Yun Lee, Christine Garcia, and No Violette Bulawayo. Today's honoree, Tommy Orange, with his novel There, There, matches Gina Berriault's combination of sparkling prose, boundless empathy, a love of storytelling, and in addition, he has demonstrated a commitment to teaching and helping young writers.
And here we are tonight at San Francisco State University, an institution of higher learning that has been a leader in humanistic and artistic endeavors. We celebrate 50 years since the protests and the strike that brought us our Ethnic Studies Department, as well as our branch of the Creative Writing Department. Yep. And we continue in that vein of art and humanism to honor a great American novel, There, There, and the artist behind it. I'm honored both as a Native American and as a writer to have Tommy Orange here with us. I actually connect with this novel on a very personal level. My father is Native American, and our family comes from the Picares Pueblo and White Mountain Apache. Growing up with my grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, and my father, hearing stories and histories from them is something that I've always felt lucky to have had. When I read There, There for the first time, I was taken aback by how familiar it was. Almost like I was getting one of those stories from my family, almost like reading a story of my family. There, There explores being Native American, but also being of mixed heritage with such a truth and tenderness. There, There shows characters who, like Walt Whitman said, contain multitudes. It's easy to see that Tommy Orange honors his history, as well as the stories of modern living Native Americans. He also honors the city where he lived. There, There is truly a Bay Area and Oakland novel. As writers, we're often told to write what we know, and Tommy Orange showcases how to write what's right under our noses and to artistically elevate it with the craft of words and language. He shows how to represent our history and our home at the same time, even if those things are different. I was able to meet Tommy Orange right before this novel came out, and it was so wonderful talking with him, hearing where he came from, where he was heading to next. And we were able to connect not only on our heritage, but as writers, and as well as just both being from Northern California. Meeting him, I knew I'd found a kindred soul, one of compassion for people, both in and out of stories, a deep care for all experience, as well as the way he spoke of his writing and encouraged others to write. I continue to be inspired by his journey.
And Danny's not the only one at the school who's been inspired by Tommy Orange's writing. A year ago, when I and the other editors at 14 Hills were tasked with finding a worthy recipient for the Gina Berriault Award, our design editor, Rachel, who had recently read There, There in Professor Mayley Chai's class, asked me, "What about Tommy Orange? Haven't you read this book?" I had not. But on Rachel's recommendation, I did. And similar to Danny, I was floored by this book's scope, its kaleidoscopic point of view, its complex structure, its resonant themes of loss, identity, and community, and especially its language, for Tommy Orange, like Berriault, crafts sentences that are nothing short of mesmerizing. And we're not the only ones to have given this book its deserved acclaim. There was longlisted for the National Book Award, won the Hemingway Foundation Pen Award, and was a 2019 finalist for one of the most prestigious awards in literature, the Pulitzer Prize.
And no one voice can represent a community. Tommy Orange's characters range from Gen Zers to baby boomers. He weaves a tapestry of family and relationships that are as complex as the native experience itself. Tommy Orange is also able to write the pain and suffering of his characters right next to their transcendence and their beauty. Tony Loneman ran, and he never stopped running. Tommy Orange fuses together emotional elements that gives his story an authentic complexity that rings true to life. And it's not just these emotional aspects that are side by side, but also a wonderful play with the past and the present. In There, Tommy Orange shows stories passed down, generational beliefs of Native people, while equally giving breath to our current use of technology, whether it's drones, 3D printing, text messaging, internet forum. Tommy Orange gives reverence to the song, to the dance, and to the drum, right next to a hip-hop master, MF Doom. From the context and foundation laid of the real history in the prologue and interlude, to the epigraphs quoting great writers such as Baldwin and Baudelaire, to the way Tommy Orange renders the breathing, pulsing urban experience with a setting that is as real as the characters on the page. Tommy Orange, as Nick described Gina Berriault, is a writer's writer.
So we're going to honor two writers tonight, but I think we can take a moment and also honor all writers and recognize the power of literature and books. Books written by authors who've crafted work, challenging our preconceived perceptions of the world, speaking truth to institutions of power, attempting to capture the weirdness of living on this planet right now. Literature is an incredible technology. In There, we can be with Blue, hiding in the bathroom stall of the Greyhound station, or Daniel Gonzalez as he flies his drone right over the lip of the Coliseum. But we don't just experience their actions or see the things they see. We're actually inside their thoughts and feelings, their dreams and their memories. We're actually inside the mind of another person, even if they're fictional. In There, Danny Oxendine says, when you hear stories from people like you feel less alone. Denny speaks the truth. And stories don't only bring people together, they expand outwards. When you read, your consciousness alters to include others. Your understanding of them grows. The heights, the depths of human experience are revealed. Books are empathy machines. They change us. I don't know if we're better or nicer afterwards, but hopefully we're wiser. So please support writers, and you can do this by reading them. Fiction writers like Tommy Orange, Jamel Brinkley, Ingrid Rojas Contreras, Carmen Maria Machado. Read Melville and Morrison and Garcia Marquez. Support poets too and journalists, memoirists. From New York Times bestsellers to your professors, to Danny's book, when, not if, he publishes it. If you can afford to, buy their books, but most importantly, read and listen to the stories they have to tell.
And Tommy Orange has shown how important it is to have a voice that's heard, a voice that tells the real history of cultures that are oppressed, unheard, and not as widely known. In a time where there's so much misunderstanding and misrepresentation, Tommy Orange, in his novel There, shows how powerful an honest and soulful voice within those oppressed cultures can be. Tommy Orange is a graduate of the MFA program at the Institute of American Indian Arts, where he now teaches. He's an enrolled member of the Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes. He was born and raised in Oakland, California. His debut novel, There, won the PEN Hemingway Award, was longlisted for the National Book Award, and shortlisted for the 2019 Pulitzer Prize. Tonight, we add one more honor to a deserving voice with the Gina Berriault Award. Let's please give a warm welcome to Tommy Orange.
The rest of what you'll hear from me is surely to be disappointing. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's been about a year and a half since the book came out. A little longer than that since my whole life has changed in a pretty significant way. But well before that, I was here at San Francisco State because I told my boss I was a writer, and she was sort of struggling to find Native writers in her classroom. This was Esther Lucero. She was a teacher at the time. I was working at the Native American Health Center in Oakland, and she brought me to her classroom, and I read some garbage story. And, even while I was reading it, just felt like I was a complete fraud. And I was. And in some ways, I still am. And the feeling, I don't think, ever goes away. And me saying I still am, maybe you could argue that that's not true, but it's the feeling of it doesn't go away. Feeling like you ever deserve to be where you are. That same year, I had started writing this book, and my wife was a project director for a Native youth suicide prevention grant, and I had also told my wife I was a writer, obviously. And she was putting together a thing for the youth to, we brought them to Alcatraz, and we brought them up to Yurok country and did a cultural exchange, and then to UC Berkeley for an author's reading. And so I was an author, but I'd never published a thing, even though one of the many places I tried to publish was 14 Hills. But it was a year after starting to write it that I started writing this book that I was to read to Native youth who, they brought me in. I was like a jack of all trades. I did a lot of flyers. I designed way too many bad flyers, and was still doing probably data entry. But they brought me in to be with Native youth because I look like a Native youth, and so my wife had me read what I'd written up to that point, which was a year into writing this novel. And I'm going to read you something right now from the novel that I read to them that remained in the novel, and reading to them and having them react to it after seeing them not react to so much that we did for them, which, not to criticize them, it's just, it's hard to reach youth in general, especially with readings from authors. But they reacted in an emotional way, and it really spurred me on from that point. This was like 2013 at UC Berkeley. So I'm just going to read a little bit from that. Thank you all for coming out. Thank you, Carolina, for coordinating. This is from the prologue, which everyone calls an essay now, like I was bringing some new form to the novel, like include essays in a novel. That's not what I was doing at all. I just want to dispel that idea that I was just like, this is a prologue, you can do whatever you want in a prologue, so I that's what I did. I wasn't trying to bring an essay form to the novel. Hard, fast. Getting us to cities was supposed to be the final necessary step in our assimilation, absorption, erasure, the completion of a 500-year-old genocidal campaign. But the city made us new and we made it ours. We didn't get lost amid the sprawl of tall buildings, the stream of anonymous masses, the ceaseless din of traffic. We found one another, started up Indian centers, brought out our families and powwows, our dances, our songs, our beadwork. We bought and rented homes, slept on the streets, under freeways. We went to school, joined the armed forces, populated Indian bars in the Fruitvale in Oakland and in the Mission in San Francisco. We lived in boxcar villages in Richmond. We made art, and we made babies, and we made way for our people to go back and forth between reservation and city. We did not move to cities to die. The sidewalks and streets, the concrete, absorbed our heaviness. The glass, metal, rubber, and wires, the speed, the hurtling masses, the city took us in. We were not urban Indians then. This was part of the Indian Relocation Act, which was part of the Indian Termination Policy, which wasn't as exactly what it sounds like, make them look and act like us, become us, and so disappear. But it wasn't just like that. Plenty of us came by choice, to start over, to make money, or for a new experience. Some of us came to cities to escape the reservation. We stayed after fighting in the Second World War, after Vietnam too. We stayed because the city sounds like a war, and you can't leave a war once you've been. You can only keep it at bay, which is easier when you can see and hear it near you, that fast metal, that constant firing around you, cars up and down the streets and freeways like bullets. The quiet of the reservation, the side of the highway towns, rural communities, that kind of silence just makes the sound of your brain on fire that much more pronounced. Plenty of us are urban now, if not because we live in cities, then because we live on the internet, inside the high-rise of multiple browser windows. They used to call us sidewalk Indians, called us citified, superficial, inauthentic, culturalist refugees, apples. An apple is red on the outside and white on the inside. But what we are is what our ancestors did, how they survived. We are the memories we don't remember, which live in us, which we feel, which make us sing and dance and pray the way we do. Feelings from memories that flare and bloom unexpectedly in our lives like blood through a blanket from a wound made by a bullet fired by a man shooting us in the back for our hair, for our heads, for a bounty, or just to get rid of us. When they first came for us with their bullets, we didn't stop moving, even though the bullets moved twice as fast as the sound of our screams. And even when their heat and speed broke our skin, shattered our bones, skulls pierced our hearts, we kept on. Even when we saw the bullets send our bodies flailing through the air like flags, like the many flags and buildings that went up in place of everything we knew this land to be before. The bullets were premonitions, ghosts from dreams of a hard, fast future. The bullets moved on after moving through us, became the promise of what was to come, the speed and the killing, the hard, fast lines of borders and buildings. They took everything and ground it down to dust as fine as gunpowder. They fired their guns into the air in victory, and the strays flew out into the nothingness of histories written wrong and meant to be forgotten. Stray bullets and consequences are landing on our unsuspecting bodies even now. Urban Indians were the generation born in the city. We've been moving for a long time, but the land moves with you like memory. An urban Indian belongs to the city, and cities belong to the earth. Everything here is formed in relation to every other living and non-living thing from the earth, all our relations. The process that brings anything to its current form, chemical, synthetic, technological, or otherwise, doesn't make the product not a product of the living earth. Buildings, freeways, cars, are these not of the earth? Were they shipped in from Mars, the moon? Is it because they're processed, manufactured, or that we handle them? Are we so different? Were we at one time not something else entirely? Homo sapiens, single-celled organisms, space dust, unidentifiable pre-bang quantum theory. Cities form in the same way as galaxies. Urban Indians feel at home walking in the shadow of a downtown building. We came to know the downtown Oakland skyline better than we did any sacred mountain range, the redwoods in the Oakland hills better than any other deep wild forest. We know the sound of the freeway better than we do rivers, the howl of distant trains better than wolf howls. We know the smell of gas and freshly wet concrete and burned rubber better than we do the smell of cedar or sage or even fry bread, which isn't traditional, like reservations aren't traditional. But nothing is original. Everything comes from something that came before, which was once nothing. Everything is new and doomed. We ride buses, trains, and cars across, over, and under concrete plains. Being Indian has never been about returning to the land. The land is everywhere or nowhere. So if there's a little more time, is that okay? I'm sorry to read off of my phone, but there's something that I wrote a long time ago. I don't think I submitted it to 14 Hills, but I looked at it again recently. My phone stopped working this morning, and it's a new phone. Special shout out to Art Diaz for his graciousness this morning. He's a wonderful person. He's out in the audience here. A round of applause for Art. But I'm going to read off my phone. DJ Ron. I get paid for what I do, but I never exactly been a dreamer. I'm a DJ at small bars in Oakland, so it's obviously kind of dumb what I do. But people move to what I play at least, and while the drinks might be doing the better share of the work, I'm still there before the crest of sound, pressing buttons and turning knobs, and well, I'm not proud, but I get paid a little. So I work like everyone else at a job that helps to pay the bills and allows me the funds to buy new records and gear, and allows me to spend time at bars on nights I'm not working when I'm actually working, doing the real work, which is making friends and acquaintances to let them know when I play and convince them to come listen so I have a crowd, so I keep getting paid to come back. I've always found ever since I was a kid that if you have something to look forward to, you can get through anything. The trick is finding some shit you love enough that you can look forward to it, because if you run out of that, you're fucked. I know. Because it's happened to me too. And when you run out and you're just going through the motions of life with no enjoyment, you start to dig your own grave. And I don't mean like metaphorically. I think you actually start building disease, like the start of some future deadly cancer. You can pull ever closer to your vital organs and shit if you stop enjoying this life and are just making your way through without anything to look forward to. Because that's what the whole thing is set up for us to look forward and move toward that thing we're looking forward to, whether that be some future marriage or kids or house or car or retirement or enlightenment or I don't know what. I guess some great job or fame or award. I don't know what people dream about or look forward to. I just know what I look forward to, and it's not some distant future. It's just the next time I get DJ at a club or in a bar at home alone with my headphones and a blunt if I can get it, which sometimes my buddy Ron doesn't roll through for me on a weekly basis. Like when he goes out of town and doesn't tell me, he'll just not show up Monday morning when he usually comes before I go to work, the restaurant I work at, washing dishes to supplement my income. Actually, it's how I make most of my money. The DJing is the supplement. We got one of those high-powered, high-heat hoses I use with thick rubber gloves so I don't get burned, and I just stand there and fucking spray the shit out of those dishes until they're super smooth of food and ready to dry in order to go back out on the floor. And it doesn't stop the whole time I'm there at my shift, just one dish or glass or piece of silverware at a time, but I don't mind because my shift goes by and it's done and I don't have to think a single thought about work again the rest of the day, which wasn't the case where I used to work doing nonprofit stuff in downtown Oakland over there at Youth Radio, where I helped kids learn about production and broadcasting and all the shit I learned at SF State, where I graduated a million years ago. Back then I was all serious, like something big would happen, like I'd end up in a studio recording big timers. But this was analog recording when I was there, and that shit all became irrelevant on me, like overnight it felt. I stayed in those dorms, those old military plus old missionary haunted ass buildings with 3 other dudes who dreamed the same dream as me. What is it about being young and dumb? It's just dream attenuation, like what you do to sound if it gets too loud. You realize when you get older you were dreaming too loud, so you make it smaller. So you know you can get there or at least near it. After I graduated, I decided I just wanted to make music. I got near it because even if that just ended up looking like putting other people's music together seamlessly in the dark so drunk people did never think the songs ended, so they'd stay and keep drinking. That's why they paid me what they paid me, which wasn't much, and the drinks were free. Tonight I'm going to this warehouse party with my buddy Ron. Yeah, it's the same Ron who sells me weed. We're actually friends and don't just pretend to be when he comes over to sell me weed. I don't know who's playing tonight. I just wanted to go out with it being one of my friends' sets, and just do something Ron wanted to do, because Ron was always coming to my shows. So, you know, I'm trying to be a good friend and be reciprocal or whatever. Actually, my DJ name is DJ Ron because of Ron. And I know it's hella plain and dumb sounding, but it seemed funny at the time that I made it up. And Ron thought it was too, and we were high and just becoming good friends, so that seemed to seal it. Plus, now that I'm somewhat known, I mean enough to get regular gigs, I can't change it because I would lose business. Because people know me as DJ Ron and show up if they see my name on a flyer at a bar. So I'm stuck with DJ Ron, which is fine and stupid. Me and Ron were at SF State together. He got his degree in sound engineering too. We got into selling weed at first illegally and now legally to clubs, so he obviously made it the better choice, right? I'll never forget this one night when we were there at SF State. We climbed over the walls of the zoo and tried to see what the animals would do when they're not being watched. They do the same thing because it's not the people watching, but the cages that make them how they are. Except one tiger was like circling his perimeter in this way that seemed to mean something more. And Ron was like, tiger circling its cage to know its cage better. I didn't think much of it then, but the thought came up, still comes up, like it means something enough to keep being revealed over time, circling our cages to know them better. Or I don't know. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much for both of those readings. Weren't they incredible? So good evening, everyone. It's been said, but just in case, I am Carolina De Robertis, and I'm assistant professor in creative writing, and have been delighted to be part of the team of making this happen. That was mainly the incredibly hard to get into, apparently, 14 Hills. And so many other people in the department. But we're going to converse a little bit, have a little bit of conversation, and then from there we're going to flow into Q&A with the audience. So just be aware that that's coming in a few minutes, and feel free to start percolating with your questions that you might have for Tommy. So I'm so glad you read that piece that has the SF State reference, right? This character that's actually been to SF State, which I think is a real gift for all of us to have that be visible in the fiction. And how long ago did you write that?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a lot of old stuff, and I'll just all of my stuff is in Google Drive, Google Docs, because I have a history of sleep erasing stuff. from my computer. And that version of myself who has destructively sleep erased a lot of writing
Yes.
is not sophisticated enough to erase and then erase from the garbage within the online.
Yeah, so it's like a child safety gate for yourself.
Well, I've done
kind
it
of.
on the computer.
Yeah.
Like, I've emptied the garbage after erasing the things on my computer, which is why I switched to writing only on Google Drive. But I've yet to erase from. I've found all my stuff in the Google Docs garbage, but it hasn't been.
But you found it
erased
there.
from-
You've
I
been
found
able to retrieve it,
know,
so you don't
move it
totally
back.
mess up the technology. So
that
this is
hasn't
a good
happened
system.
in a while.
But there are things that are lost like that, like
it has
lost.
been. It has been. Yeah.
Is that rough?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is just rough. It's like, oh, just let it go. No,
It's like a lot of time lost. If maybe the writing was horrible, and it probably was, but at the time that you feel this distinct experience of having devoted your time to something, and all of that is gone. Like the work may not be worth it, but the time that you spent on it to even consider, is it worth it? It's all gone.
Right. And you'll never get back that exact same flow. I mean, even this felt like there was so much flow in that voice. Like the cadence of stream of consciousness was really powerful. Even hearing it read out loud, it's very rhythmic. And you show us that even F-bombs can be lyrical, right? Because there's that down-to-earthness in the voice, and then there's also the lyricism of it. It's very alive. Has it been published?
No.
Not yet.
I just pulled it out of wherever it was from.
I wonder if you'd be willing to consider giving it to 14 Hills.
If they would consider me.
The editor-in-chief might be persuaded.
I would be happy to have a home at 14 Hills for it.
All right, you'd be open? All right. Did you see that? That is publishing in action. Awesome. Thank you, that's amazing.
I don't want to use a public platform to pressure Nick into a
Yeah, right.
publication.
Pressure, Nick Green, editor-in-chief, yes. So we were just actually talking in workshop today, at Fiction Workshop in the MFA program, about this, about having pieces that you don't know where to go with next, or they don't quite get done, or you never make it to polishing with it, whether you just don't see the vision for it, or you're working a lot of things at once, and then the possibility of circling back to them years later and seeing the potential in them, or they get absorbed into a new novel, or you return to them, or you never return to them, they're in the compost heap forever, or the graveyard, or whatever metaphor works, right? Will you return to this old stuff? What do you think?
Let's stop using the dead baby metaphor. Have you heard this one?
No, which one is this?
People use this dead baby metaphor, which is horrible.
Which is like it's like a dead baby? The work that you don't return to is like a dead baby. That's great. Well, I have this compost metaphor. For me,
That's okay. Bad.
It's like you put it in the compost.
I'm sorry I brought it up. I thought people knew about it already.
But it reminds me of Cristina Garcia, who also won the Gina Berriault Award a few years ago, Dreaming in Cuban, and so many other great novels. And I was talking to her and a couple other novelists about how I was putting a part of a novel into a compost heap. And I was like, it's in the compost heap. It might turn into something. She's like, that's nice. But to me, I have this second novel I never finished, and I just go back and I cannibalize it.
That's more of what I do.
Yeah, okay. You want to speak to that?
For this book, my editor, so a lot of characters died along the way. There's a lot of characters already in it, but there was 15 going into, like, my editor's read and edit of it. And she said she wanted 3 dead and a new chapter born.
Dead, like dead baby,
done.
like out of the book.
Well, we don't need, I'm sorry I brought up the dead baby thing. Just gone out of the book. So I killed 2, and I cannibalized 1 to make the new chapter she wanted. Oh. So I do cannibalism.
That was cannibalism. Which chapter was that?
So the new Opal chapter, where she's older, cannibalized on a younger person.
A younger person. You took that, yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's interesting, right, in the editorial process where you have so much and then have to think about, like, balancing what is gained and what is lost by having a lot of things, having vastness, having structure and cohesion, right? And especially in such an ambitious work as this, it's being as a polyphonic novel, right? So many voices telling the story and holding the narrative from the first person plural in the not an essay prologue, right? To all of these different voices telling their stories and then circling together. I mean, it's a lot to put together. Was there a lot of revision in making those things work together, cohere, or?
For sure, and I think to move away from cannibalism into music.
Great.
I think when you're working with something that tonally has similarities, if you think in terms of music, pulling a section from a piece of music that feels tonally similar makes more sense to transpose it, or just to pull directly a passage that could work in another section of the music you're working with. I think can make a lot of sense, and not to have to do more work than you need to do. I've found when I've been depressed or like uninspired, like I don't want to make new work, and I'd like feel too self-deprecating or self-loathing to be in a space where I can make new work. I'm like, well, what did I already do that I can rework? So sometimes it's like a sort of survival instinct to just like grasp at straws for what I can put together for what's being asked for, because at that particular point in my life, during this particular 3-week cycle where I'm like feeling particularly like I am worthless, why am I trying to write a book? Or I'm like, well, at that point in time, I can capture where I felt good, and actually that writing was inspired, and whatever I would try to write new would not be. So let me I can work something out of that.
Right, so you can almost take refuge in revision when the generating part is like, it just feels too hard, it feels overwhelming or impossible, and then you can kind of work with what you have, and it's a little more accessible.
I think more than 50% of writing is revision. There's so much, like the new, exciting, like I want to write something new is a great feeling, and the next day or the day of, you're like, this is amazing, I'm great. But so soon after, you're
Aren't
like,
those the great
oh
moments?
my God, this is so stupid. But the revision, what it can do to what you then realize is not really that good, is really cool about writing, and where writing is revision makes the most sense, because most people can't write first great sentences, like, what was it, Allen Ginsberg, or that group was like first thought, best thought, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's usually not true for
Usually
writing.
not true. Maybe not even for them.
For sure not.
Right? So, I mean, I think one of the many, many things you've achieved in this book is textural variance, like you were talking about tones, musical tones. There's so much textural variance within this book because there's different voices. Everyone's voice has its own cadence, like on a sentence level, like the style of each person, their voices, their consciousness is so alive and so particular, and it happens at like the way the translator Emily Wilson talks about it is, it happens at the microscopic level of the word, right? If stories matter, how we tell them matters, and it's at the microscopic level of the word that there's so much power achieved here. And you have said in an interview that you partly wanted to write a polyphonic novel because you come from a voiceless community, and wanting to build in as much voice as possible. There was an urgency there. Looking back, is that still what's true for you? Can you talk about that?
I think when I first started talking about the book, I wanted to sound smarter about it than I actually was.
This was an early interview. Okay.
I mean, I wanted to sound more intentional. When I was writing it, I wasn't like sort of meta, like I come from a voiceless community, let me do a polyphonic novel to sort of remedy that particular positioning as a community that I feel. To be involved with a big, long work, I think you're working with the unconscious, which can like do things like mysteriously that sort of answer to some of these problems. What I was thinking at the time of writing it was like, I like books that have a lot of voices.
Yeah.
let me try that.
Yeah, that's great. That's such a good reason to write a particular style, right? I love this. I'm drawn to it. I'm going to take the plunge.
And then for sure,
Yeah.
knowing that there was a vacuum of this particular community added to the want to like pour in voices to like, there's no representation of this particular voice. So it wasn't totally unintentional,
Yeah.
but sometimes I'll hear things that I've said before, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't.
But that's understandable though, because like we always don't always know why we wrote what we write, and like one of the hardest questions can be, what made you want to write this book? You're like, there are 16,000 reasons, because it's such a deep thing, right, to write a book. So maybe they're all true. But I love what you said about the unconscious also working, right? We don't always know why we're pulled to write in that particular way. It seems like you also followed your intuition a lot. So.
I think a lot of things, and this gets a little bit woo-woo, and I don't like that direction in general.
We don't have to take that direction.
But I just want to take it for a second.
Good. Okay. We can also take that direction.
I think a lot of people work from an unconscious place more than they are comfortable admitting to, and the ego sort of does the work of being like, no, this is all my doing. And I don't think that's that much true.
How does reading factor in to your process in terms of listening to your intuition, knowing how the story wants to be told, who is going to be in the story, right? Like shaping the world of your fiction, whether it's in revising on a sentence level or like just generating the world. I know you're a deep reader and an intrepid reader. I mean, and that's clear from the book with all the intertextuality and all of the beautiful quotes and references. Gertrude Stein and Brecht and Baldwin and Baudelaire have already been mentioned. And last time I saw you at the Bay Area Book Festival, you were reading a Lee Spector novel, and you'd brought in Elaine Castillo's America is Not the Heart, which is where I first heard of her book, and thank you for that, because then I read it, and it's amazing. So, you have a rich reading life. Can you talk about how it flows with your writing life?
Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly reading a ton of books at once.
Yeah.
I've also been asked to like blurb a lot, and I had so much blurb love that I like want to give back. There's certain writers that are like the whole blurb world is, I don't know, shallow and whatever, not real. And I totally failed on your book.
Oh, whatever.
And there's all these like interpersonal relationships and the timing of it and
Of
whether or not
course.
it works. And
Yeah.
it's a weird world. The blurb world is a weird world.
It's a very weird world. Yeah.
But I'm reading a lot constantly, new books, because I've always, since I decided I wanted to write, I've always been reading contemporary fiction because I wanted to see what people are doing. How it influences my work now, it's less so than it did before. I think research, after a certain point, research influences more of my work than reading does. I try to get my moments where I'm just reading to enjoy reading as much as I can, which is hard. But I really love reading and eating, and that's been like since I first fell in love with reading. It's just something about like going out to eat with a book has been, or not even necessarily out, like it's any kind of eating, but reading and eating has been a love of mine for a long time.
Yeah. Do you have strategies for propping the book open?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very intricate. Like
Yeah.
the whole thing's sort of a dance.
Totally. Yeah.
You have to, I've gotten really deft with my left hand because I eat with my right.
Oh.
And there's certain foods that work better to eat with.
Yes, absolutely. Because there's like hand foods, like burgers are rough.
Yeah. Oh, I don't do burgers with.
I found butter knives to hold it down. But
Certain things that I wouldn't necessarily eat with a fork, I do eat with a fork when I'm reading and eating because the messiness of the page, I don't want to mess up the page too much.
yeah.
All my pages end up sort of destroyed with, I just don't treat my books well. But I try to minimize it so I don't look like a complete slob.
Maybe it's just like a visceral kind of love that you have for your books.
It is.
I mean, maybe that's a way of treating them well. I mean, I think this is a really, personally, I mean, I think this is an exciting avenue of conversation. It's just the physicality of reading, right? The physicality of being in those moments of pleasure and imbibing a book and imbibing it as you imbibe food,
Yeah.
nourishing on all these levels.
And like relationships are messy. Like
Why can't reading be? Why
should
can't
be.
your relationship with books be?
they should be.
Yeah.
So reading has influenced me as a writer just completely, and I've read a lot over the years. Reading out loud, which is just sort of a side subject, is a huge part of my revision process. So I like to work in hotel rooms where I know no one's necessarily listening, and I read out loud when I get to a certain draft stage, and I'll know if a sentence is where it should be because of the way it sounds out loud, and that's a huge part of my revision process.
Mm-hmm. And that's like when you're ready for the polishing, the sentence level, the sound. Yeah. I see. Can we talk a little about being a writer in these political times, like these political and cultural times? Like we're here on this stage, we're in a world, there's a lot of different things going on in this world. And just what it's like to walk in the world as a writer, as a Native American writer, as a writer of color, what challenges or opportunities you see in being part of cultural conversation in a time like this. Kind of take it whichever direction you want.
No, I mean, my book's been tied to everything that's this moment right now from the very beginning. Like
How is that for you?
sort of ends up with me attributing a lot of the success of my book to Trump.
Can I use an expletive?
It's sad, but no, there's truth to it that's uncomfortable, that's real. Like, I'm just gonna give you two very real realities. I'm not like just saying like because it's a political time and that he's a dumb shit monster that like the book's doing well because it's like the opposite of that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I read at a writing conference that I'm gonna teach at as of Wednesday night. This is like tomorrow night. I go to this writing conference called Writing by Writers. Pam Houston puts it on.
Great.
I was a fellow there, and another writer, Clairvay Watkins, heard me read, and she sent. She said she would send my manuscript to her agent, and this was October 2016, and I was like, cool, that's amazing. But then like nothing really happened, and it was like the day after Trump got elected. Her and her husband both had my manuscript, both sent it to their respective agents as a call to action. Because a lot of people who, like literary people, what do? You can't do much. You can write toward it, or you can like try to promote other authors. Both sent it out. Her agent, who ended up being a really big literary agent, was up with anxiety 3 nights later because she had to leave the country, and there was a Muslim ban, and she has Arabic origins, and she was afraid she couldn't get back into the country. She was up at 4 a.m. reading my manuscript that was sent as a call to action to Trump being elected, and said it gave her hope in that sort of dark time. And she called me the next day and signed me. And so it was very related. Also, Standing Rock had just happened, and Native literature being paid attention to as a history of having big political moments right before the interest. So the occupation of Alcatraz was followed by a sort of renaissance and publishing attention. 1990s, Dances with Wolves won a bunch of Academy Awards.
Right.
And a lot of Native literature was being published at the time, Standing Rock, and now there's this sort of Native renaissance happening. So it's all connected to a political moment that I can't say that's not there. I'm not trying to say like, my writing is worthless and just related to a political time, but I can't look away from that.
I mean, the part of my question was like, what are some of the challenges and opportunities? And maybe that is part of the opportunity of this time, is that There are some people who are horrified by what's happening, the many injustices and the sweep, right, terrible things that are happening in our politics, who are awakened by it in ways that they might not have been before, and maybe whose blinders are dropping or expanding open in ways that they hadn't before, and that opens opportunities for works by marginalized writers to be seen maybe in ways that they weren't. That doesn't mean that your success is attributable to Trump. I'm sorry, fuck that guy. He doesn't get to have it. It's yours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Totally. A couple of Trump supporters, I guess.
What's that? Oh,
I'm kidding.
possibly.
No way.
No. But that's, that is my opinion. This is a public university that has an explicit social justice mission. And that is part of how we're sitting on this stage. And that is part of how we're having the level of frank conversation that we're having.
Well, I think what you're saying is true. Like, none of this would be possible. I'm not trying to attribute more to Trump.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if this didn't happen, it's like a cancer showing up,
Yeah.
and like somebody getting healthier and getting something seen to that would have killed them. While it like gets ugly for a long time, you would hope that the help that you get because you saw the cancer would eventually lead to recovery.
Yeah.
We're still in the moment of like, will it kill us or will it be recovered?
Right? Will it? Where we go with it? There is some awakening that is coming out of being in an era of backlash, of racist backlash and bigotry of many forms, and that backlash can also trigger awakenings, right? And so, if your book got swept up to the surface through that awakening, then that is fantastic, And that, we can think about that with, there are people in this room who are, emerging or aspiring or hopeful writers. And I think it's important to think about, how can we participate in shaping the future of culture in a time where we can look around and we can see so much backlash and we can see so much repression and we can see so much unapologetic racism, but we can also see some really powerful voices in our culture also getting lifted and staying strong.
And I think there needs to be a line drawn between, so I have a chip on my shoulder. Like I come from an experience of getting into certain things that are prestigious and actually hearing from white people that also got in, and me expressing to them sort of sincerely and honestly, like, I'm always afraid that I got in because I'm Native. And having the experience of having more than once people being like, well, isn't that why you got in? Like, that being a real reaction from people who really think that's the reason. And I think there needs to be a line drawn, because I think we're at a moment that, I don't know when it was, but at some point, there was the white NBA, right? So my dad was really good at basketball, and he couldn't play in college because his college coach was racist and it was an all-white team. At some point, there was a white NBA. And then at some point, they realized, oh.
Uh-huh.
And this is happening in literature and the arts.
That's the O.
And it's not just tokenism, and it's not just do it for quota or do it for this. It's like, we're better because we had to fight harder. And this is why they were better in the NBA and why it's now, this is where we're at. And this is where it's going. It's not just a political moment. Like, we're better because we had to be, and we will continue to be.
And we need the work that comes from that. We've needed this book. Yeah. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then we're going to, I think, make our move towards audience questions. Can you tell us about what you're working on? One of the things you're working on is going to many places and talking about your work and reading from your work, and we're all very grateful for that. Can you tell us about creative work that's percolating?
Sure. Only because my agent recently okayed what I'm doing. I'm working on a new novel, which is actually a follow-up to this novel, which feels like a bad word to say, but it's a sequel.
Oh, it is. Oh, that's exciting. So there's something that we get to hear from these characters again?
Yeah. So it's
is anybody else really excited?
So I'm trying to sell a short story collection which goes in a lot of different directions, and then a follow-up to this novel, which is also a very different novel, but it's sort of like, how do you come back from something which was and was not a tragedy, which is what it feels like to be Native, to not be allowed to feel like what it feels like, because people minimalize your experience, and history is told wrong, and so there's sort of the microcosm of the macrocosm of the Native American experience is experienced by the characters that try to come back from this tragedy that's not really a tragedy. It was just like a armed robbery gone wrong. So it sort of has these layers to it.
Oh, those are exciting layers. Very cool. Is there anything else you want to say before we turn it over to the audience?
No, just thank you all for coming out. I appreciate it. Special shout out to Elizabeth Tom in the front row here, who's I've worked with over the years at the Native American Health Center. I appreciate seeing you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you. All right, so we've got the mic. If you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. And sure, go ahead, sir. So we're going to bring the mic over to you. We're going to ask you to definitely speak your questions into the mic because we're recording.
Okay, I just was wondering, tell me if you were a big reader when you were a kid and growing up, and what did you enjoy reading then?
I was not a reader at all as a kid. We would read at the Diamond Library in Oakland. We would read.
Oh my God, that's my neighborhood library. Where my kids read. It's beautiful.
We would read enough books to be able to get A's tickets. So I wasn't a reader, and nobody encouraged me to do anything academically. Our family was like, there's a lot going on, a lot of crazy stuff going on, and I didn't start reading until after college. So there's nothing for me to say about that.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Great. Another question. Yes, sir.
Hi. I was just wondering, have you written any memoirs or any writing about your own life story? And if you have, what have you written, or do you have any plans on doing that?
Well, there's some in the book that's very thinly veiled in the novel. I started writing an autobiographical novel, family novel, that's from the voices of all the members of my family. Everyone in my family started getting really intense about that, and I backed off of it. I would like to write something eventually and dig back into that novel. Recently, actually, my next novel started cannibalizing that novel project, and that might happen. Every time I go to write something that's not fiction, be it essay or memoir type stuff, I feel like it's homework, and even if like I'm getting paid or like I'm on deadline for something, I like want to cheat on it to go write fiction. So like I love fiction the most and what it can do. And I think that'll always be what I want to do, but eventually I think I'll probably do other stuff. But I love fiction the most.
Hi. Can you go back and talk about the feedback that you got from the students when you read that section, and have they read the book and what they think about it now? And then also, can you talk about the research you had to do for these characters and that process a little bit? Thanks.
So I haven't seen any of the students after that first year of writing it. What happened in that session was that young people were crying and asking a lot of questions, which that's one of the things that they didn't do. And it was just a very emotional moment, which was also something that wasn't characteristic of our time with the youth. The native Oakland reaction in general from community members who know the community has been really amazing, and that's all I've had to gauge it by. Sorry, the second part of the question was what?
Just about the research you had to do to get your characters and their stories organized.
I didn't do any intentional research for the characters. I grew up in Oakland. I worked in the community for almost a decade. I did a lot of storytelling work, and intentionally did not base my characters on real people, because I came to revere how people earn their details. It's like when you bring up a detail, it may seem like an interesting detail to use, but a lot of this language, like, is colonization, and I never felt comfortable like basing a character to use for my, like, I can't get around the language of even like talking about the idea of somebody else's story for my fictional work. So aside from my own story and my family's story, who I've gotten permission to use, I never based any of my characters on real people. So any influence was composite based on years of experience, just living in the community and working in the community, but was never like I'm doing research for a character and then I'm starting this character based on this person specifically. That was never a part of my process.
I read that you live in Angels Camp now. That's not very urban. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the silence there. And also, I haven't read your novel, by the way, but I read a little bit about you. And it sounds like you are nurtured by the urban community, and I wonder what it's like to be away from it now.
Yeah, I miss the city for sure. Me and my wife both had jobs lined up at a tribal organization that had a tribal leadership change, which can happen at certain tribal organizations. And we both didn't have jobs suddenly. So we moved from Oakland to Copperopolis, which is where my wife grew up. And it's a very rural, very Trump-friendly environment. And it's not by choice, and I don't love it. We recently tried to move back to Oakland, and it was still too expensive, even though my book has had pretty good success. But it's like book success is not the same as like tech success. So we bought a house further up the mountain from where she grew up, and I need to sell another book to move back. I love the city. I love Oakland. I want to be here, but we sort of got dislocated by the inability for certain people to be able to afford to live here.
Hi, I'm just curious as to what you are hoping that non-Indigenous readers take away from this book about urban natives, especially when most of the stories are surrounding like res natives or natives of the quote-unquote past.
I wrote the book without thinking there would be a non-native audience. because that's usually who reads Native work. And I was at the Institute of American Indian Arts in Santa Fe doing my MFA, and the director of my school said, if you publish a book, I'll give you a job as a teacher. And so I wanted to finish the book because I wanted a job as a teacher. It was a very base level goal. And so I was thinking I would publish it at a small university, and like my fellow teachers would read it, and I'd make my students read it. But I never had a goal in mind for non-Native people. I certainly edit with a general reader in mind. That's just trying to respect the reader-writer relationship, respecting any reader's time spent on the page. Try to respect that relationship and give them what readers like, which is keep a good pace, have dialogue and scene, also have thoughts that penetrate further than the surface of dialogue and scene, and balance it all well. But I never had what is the non-Native audience going to think of this in mind while writing it.
There are now a lot of hands. Tommy, do you want to pick? No pressure. Is that too rough?
I feel like it went up in a wave.
Yeah, it was a wave.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm an MFA candidate here. I'm just wondering what element of craft came to you most easily when you began writing, and perhaps is still very easy, and which is the hardest for you currently?
I'm always confused about the elements of craft and what the official ones are. There are definitely dialogue and description. Is that even one? I always felt that I was inept in all of them, and I'm just faking my way along. I think voice, moving into starting a piece with a feeling I was convinced by a voice that came when I started writing. And whether I moved that from first person to third to second, or third close or third removed, to play with the eventual POV, I feel building from a strong voice. Is voice an element of craft? Okay, so I feel that's the thing that's come easy, or it's the thing that's been able to convince me to keep working with a character.
There's a hand in the
This guy right here.
Oh,
He's
yeah, go ahead.
after
Oh, sorry.
him.
Good eye, Tommy. Thank you.
Thank you. You mentioned that you're working on, or maybe you finished a short story collection. I'd love to hear how the process of putting together those short stories, or even writing those short stories, was different than writing your first novel and now writing your second novel. Just how you kind of think about that, and how it has been different in those two different kinds of formats.
Well, with novels, you're very much stuck within, you sort of make a world, and you're stuck within the rules of that world that you make to some extent, and the characters that you decide on. Short stories, you can kind of do anything, and I love that about short stories. I have one short story that got published. So for 7 years, I tried to, I entered the Zoetrope short fiction contest, and on the 7th year, I got an honorable mention, and to me it was a win. It was all that I needed. And at the last fall, they asked me to submit a short story, which was amazing. And they accepted it, which was more amazing to me. And it's about a guy who has a third hand that's growing out of his chest, and about a friendship with a guy that knows this secret. And not that much happens in the story, but it's a very different story than anything in the novel. And the thing that I read is very different in tone and even rhythmically. So I love that short stories can kind of do whatever they want within the span that they live within. And novels, you're stuck with what you decide on in terms of the world that you decide to convey. So I like that I can have both happening at once. Did that answer your question?
We have time for one more question.
I think this guy back there.
Hi, I'm Danny. I actually grew up in good old Copperopolis, California.
Oh, wow.
And I know how the people are. And I was wondering, living in that kind of climate, did that influence your writing at all? Or how did that, how did that influence your writing while writing there?
Well, I grew up in Oakland, so like living in Copperopolis was like, I was just afraid. I don't know which part of Copperopolis. Like, was this before New Old Town?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, in some ways, when you live outside of a place, you can get a better perspective on it and write about it better. So I didn't have to be in Copperopolis to write about Oakland from outside of Oakland. I could have been almost anywhere, I think. I just moved outside of Angels Camp, which I lived there for a few years, and just started writing a short story I'm really happy about after moving out of Angels Camp, which I'm sure you know Angels Camp if you grew up in Copperopolis. Angels Camp is where Mark Twain launched his literary career, and this is where I launched mine. And Mark Twain is all over the town, and frogs are too, because his short story, The Jumping Frogs of Calaveras County, and they have a frog jump every year. It's a fair, it's a state fair. The kids get out 3 days out of school.
For the frog jump?
Yep.
Wow.
And nobody even remembers that Mark Twain wrote a story. It's just the frog jump.
Wow.
And this is what it looks like. People out there like you all, the stage, and frogs get plopped down on a circle, and these crazy white people. It's all white people. It's just all white people. I'm not saying it. It's just an observation.
It is an observation. It is just an observation.
They scream under the frog butts.
Under the what? I'm sorry?
Frog butts.
Yes, okay. I thought I had something in my ear, but no.
So
That's fantastic.
the idea, you would think that there are like impressive frog jumps, like distances, right?
Yeah.
It's three unimpressive jumps added up.
Wow.
And what we're talking about is frog escape from crazy white people screaming under their butts. They're trying to escape. And you just see like 3 jumps, not even the same direction. They're just like freaking out because they're like, rah! They get under their butts. They scream under their butts. Rah!
So if you were to write this in a short story, can you just imagine the potential for subtext?
This is in the story that I'm writing now. This is.
Yes! Okay!
It's craziness.
Genius.
And it all ends with a demolition derby.
In your story or in real life?
In real life.
Oh, wow.
I've been to 3 of them. It's craziness.
Wow. Well, this story from your pen is just going to be right on. Thank you so much. Fantastic. On that exciting note.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tommy Orange, for joining us, for being here at San Francisco State. San Francisco State loves you. 14 Hills loves you.
We'll
we
see.
all are so damn thrilled you're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolina.
Thank you all so much for coming. Thank you all so much for coming. There are books for sale. Thank you to the San Francisco State University Bookstore and India Chakraverti, who not only works there but is one of our MFA students, will be selling books. And Tommy will sign books. So if you have a book that you brought or that you are buying, you can come and get it signed from Tommy and say hello. And thank you all so very much. Have a good evening.